Hello and welcome to episode 82 of Heating Up the UK, a Miami Heat UK based podcast. I'm your host, Dan Healy. Before we come to today's episode, as always, please check out the YouTube channel, Miami Heat UK TV. You have seen now the full programme list. We have released it. You've got Game Day from the UK, live pre-game streaming show each and every game day. You've got all episodes of Heating Up the UK going on there for people that prefer to watch and listen. You've got Ollie Rahimi's Let's Talk Hoop podcast. That's starting up again this season, and lots of other fun and game things as well. You've got, as per Heat Twitter, you've got shot recreation of the week. You've got the betting tips, W Dollar. We've got Ask the Misses. We've got all sorts of fun going on. It's going to be really good. 305 seconds, loads of stuff. It's all in one place. Miami Heat's UK TV on YouTube. Please go over and subscribe. On to today's episode. And joining me today, we did this last season. We did a running round robin seed in the East. We did it with two fantastic guys from Miami Heat Beat, but we're only doing it with one today, and I'll explain why in a second. But first of all, let's introduce the co-founder of Heat Beat, Giancarlo Navas. G, how are you, sir?
Doing good, man. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me on. Always make time for you guys. You guys got so much stuff going on. My goodness.
We try to keep busy.
That's
Yeah,
good.
it's all right. We're recharged now. Like I've literally, it took me, I'm not lying, like 3 months to get over staying up till 4 a.m. 3 times a week. So
I don't think
I'm
I don't think
just now
people
recharged.
realize how nice the break is for
Yeah.
us. We need it. Us content creators. We that period, right after free agency when nothing happens till the start of training camp. Oh man, I've slept better than I have in years.
Well, this is it. People were saying, "Are you still going to be plodding? You're still going to be..." I'm like, "No, I'm sleeping."
There's nothing to talk about. There's nothing to talk about. Unless Ethan over at 5 Reasons will come up with a topic every week. I was like, damn, bro, I'm so commitment.
I don't know how to do it, and same with Locked On. They've got to do this shit every day. How do they do it?
Ramil and West, they'll figure stuff out. I was like, what are you guys doing? I was like, nothing.
Oh, that's great stuff. Well, as I said, we did this last year, me, you, and Brass Jazz. Brass, an incredible take during last season's episode of this. Brass had NBA finalists Boston Celtic to see 10th last year. So he's not invited.
He was right for like half the year.
To be fair, he was.
It wasn't looking bad like by All-Star break.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, they went on a bit of a juggernaut. So we're going to try and speed it up a little bit this year. It's just me and you, G. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to go round robin, so it will be you pick, I pick, you pick, I pick, starting from 15 all the way up to 1. So we'll have between us a list 1 to 15. And because I can't figure out who I want to pick as 15th, I've gone back and forward between 3 teams. I'm going to put it down to you, sir. So get us rolling. Pick our number 15th team.
I think it's probably going to be the Orlando Magic again. I think that probably you're thinking of the Pistons as well, kind of in that spot. Maybe Indiana around there too. The bottom 3 from last year, I think it would be the same. But I think that Detroit has a couple players that you expect to take a bit of a leap that should get them closer to 30 wins. They were at 20. They were 29 and 59 last year. And I just think Orlando has a lot of projects. And I don't think that even they're really good guys. I don't think that they have anybody who you expect, okay, you're going to come in and you're really going to take the reins here and get us to 30 wins or 25 wins or whatever. So I unfortunately for Orlando, but I do like what they're doing. Obviously, I don't think there's been any word on Jonathan Isaac coming back, who would truly help bulk up their defense. He may have a January 6th trial to attend. We are waiting a word on that. Yeah. But other than that, I think Orlando for the bottom.
Yeah, I think the perfect summary of that was they've got a lot of projects, like you said there, and their roster is just, it's full of like 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds. Like, I mean, they're all exciting players, Suggs, Fultz, they obviously now got the number 1 pick in Banchero, Wagner, Anthony. These are all good, young, exciting players. And if I'm a Magic fan, I'm actually, I'm excited for the future. But that future is exactly that. It's the future, and this is going to be another developmental season for them. So I've got no real
Wagner.
problems.
You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like Wendell is good. Terrence Ross is going to be in Orlando Magic until the end of time. But I don't think those are like lead your team guys. Obviously they have Markelle Fultz, who, is certainly something.
Yeah, yeah. We don't
And
know what.
Cole Anthony, a guy who kind of struggled, couldn't really start a lot last year as well. I know that that's going to be another point of contention this year for him. So stuff like that. I just don't think they have like enough like number one. I think their offense is going to struggle too. So
Yeah,
obviously with their first round pick, you kind of hope, but
yeah.
Suggs
No,
also a disappointment for them. I think a bit. Uh,
yeah. I think this. Yeah, as you say, you need somebody. I mean, it's all very well having those young players, but you need somebody to try and lead that team. And at the moment, they haven't got that. So I think it's fair. You mentioned obviously it's the three obvious teams, isn't it? And you mentioned them all there. I'm actually going to go at number 14, Indiana. And
hmm.
even though I think their squad it's okay. I mean, they've got Halliburton, who's going to be their future. You've got Jaden Smith, who's looking very, very, is a strong prospect. But Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, Daniel Tice. I mean, Hield and Turner, I don't expect will be there past trade deadline. They might not even be there by the time the season
A
starts.
lot
Who
of
knows?
guys, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
might not be there
So
past the deadline.
yeah. So Indiana, I think if they can build around a new team around Halliburton, I mean, there's a lot of teams this year that you think there's many that you believe will start the season looking to make a push to try and hit that play in. But I think there's at least three or maybe four that actually will go the other way. There'll be a lot of guys that want to just try and get this number one pick for Wembyana, or whatever you pronounce his name.
Yeah,
Um,
he looks good.
he looks very good. I mean, a real talent already right now. So I'm going to put Indiana down at 14. You got anything against that?
No, I agree, and I think that they're a team that actually may start a lot better than they end,
Yeah,
because I do think that they have out of those three teams, I think they have the most proven veteran talent. I think Detroit obviously has the biggest upside
yeah,
because they have Cade and a couple of those other guys that they've drafted. But I think Indiana has a lot of vets. Like obviously Miles Turner is at times has been a Defensive Player of the Year candidate for stretches. You have a lot of veterans: James Johnson, Langston Galloway, TJ McConnell, as we make fun of a ton, but solid backup guard.
100%.
Tice, as you mentioned, Halliburton and Neesmith, Buddy Hield, good young kind of players for them. So I they might start better, and I think as the team gets deconstructed and broken down and sold for parts, I think that they may kind of end a lot worse than they start. I imagine a lot of these guys won't finish the season with them,
Yeah,
although the Miles Turner kind of trade rumor is always in the works for them. I don't know when they're going to get rid of him at what point, but also I wouldn't rule them out of being a team that could pursue Ben Simmons if Durant gets moved. And we've talked about this a lot with the Heat. The Bam Ben Simmons coexistence because of a salary cap um thing, that two guys who are
yeah,
extended off a whatever, some cap rule that Bam and Ben cannot be there. That's a team that I look at and be like, I can see them trying to absorb Ben. They're one of two teams with cap space. I believe it's them
yeah.
and the San Antonio Spurs next season. So they're gonna be a team that can take on contracts. And I think that that's probably the smart thing to do. As long as you got like some of your young guys locked up, get a good pick, absorb some deals and some picks. So I could see them kind of starting better and then kind of petering out.
Yeah, I completely agree. So in that sense, then I think your 13 will probably be quite obvious. I think it's the obvious three teams here. So I assume it's Detroit.
So it's kind of tough because, like, you look at a team like Detroit, Washington, New York, and I think any of those teams really can be here and it wouldn't surprise me. I'm going to go New York
Woo!
instead of Detroit. After I've thought about it more, I am not an RJ Barrett person. I just don't really understand like the fascination with him. Um, I They have just a bunch of guys that I don't know, man. It just doesn't. Not that they're like bad, but I just think that like you look at other teams like Detroit or Washington, and I just think that in theory the top end talent's better. I think probably with New York, you have more that can go wrong. Obviously, like we need to see what Randall was going to give them if he's going to have a bounce back year. I think a lot of people are betting on RJ Barrett being better than he is, which I don't really think is like the right move. I mean, they they had their big off-season splash, right? Which is like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, cool. You know, Jalen Brunson is here, like, you know, all that. So I'm not a big New York believer. I think that it's gonna be like somewhere between them and Detroit, kind of down there. But I think I'm gonna pencil in New York.
Okay. I think the best way of summing up New York, somebody, I can't remember who it was, put when they put the graphic up of Brunson, RJ Barrett, and Randall as their big three. And it was like someone said that's the most mid big three the NBA in NBA history. Like they're not bad players, but if that's your big three, you're not going to be you're not going to be going too far in this world. I did have them a little bit higher, to be honest. I had them in the last play-in. I had them in 11. Yeah, not a million miles out, but okay, you've got them in at 13.
Also,
Um,
Tom Thibodeau teams, they have like negative return. It's like they always start really good the first year, and then like every year, it's like, you know, it's a half life of nice dope.
yeah,
So that's another thing to
actually, I
watch
just
out for.
realised 11 isn't even the plan, is it? 10 is the plan. So yeah, they
Mm.
didn't make the plan for me. That was just short of that. So yeah, no, that's fair. Okay, so we've got Magic, Pacers, Knicks. I think now it probably does have to be Detroit in at 12. As I said, a bit like the Magic. They've got talent. They probably got more talent in terms of obviously just having Cade alone. I think he's a superstar. He's a bunch of superstar coming. Kemba, Ivy, Bagley, Bogdanovic. That was a weird one. That was a really weird one. The Bogdanovic in for Kelly Olynyk. I'm not really sure who that improves. I mean, you would probably say
He's a good player. You know what I mean? Like, he's gonna help them. You know, he's the guy that's gonna help you win basketball games. I imagine it depends. It really depends on how their season goes. Because if they're fighting for a play-in spot, maybe them and his organization thinks it's valuable to give their young core kind of some games that matter experience. If they're more toward the bottom, they can probably flip Bogdanovich for something kind of, you know, nice at the deadline for, you know, for a rebuilding team. So it could, you know, to quote the Deuces, it could go either way. But
yeah. Did you? What did you think of the Bogdanovich Olynyk thing? Because it would have been a player that Miami could have maybe have got if they. Well, I think a lot of people thought, well, we're not going to give up a first round pick for that sort of player, and I totally
Olynyk
agree
or
with that.
Bogdanovich?
Bogdanovich,
I would prefer Olynyk.
I actually agree. I think Olynyk is. I know we've had that experience, but when you look
I
now,
like the KO. I was a KO lifer.
it was the perfect sort of fit, isn't it? Now next to Bam, it just makes this roster complete.
The
And
perfect.
Bogdanovich does that too. But when you consider it cost the Kelly Olynyk, could the Heat not have got involved in that? It seemed a bit of a
I mean,
strange
what did they
trade.
get? I mean, I don't think anything they again, like, Detroit can flip Bogdanovich later,
Yeah,
and you know, they have, you know, I think that they want to, you know, they want to play. They have like their guys that they want to play in their bigger lineups, Isaiah Stewart, Beef Stew. Um, you know, they have a couple, like, you know, kind of tweener threes and fours, right? So I think Olynyk didn't really fit in kind of the style that they wanted to play.
yeah,
I do think that Bogdanovich could have been really helpful here, but again, it's just kind of like another guy who's a little too small to
mm,
play four, and you know what I mean. So it kind of puts you back in the situation of like, okay, like, we start Bogdanovich at the four, that doesn't make me feel great.
yeah.
Olynyk makes a little more sense just because I
He's
think
7
he's
foot.
have the synergy with Bam. He's a shooter. I don't think he's a horrible defender. I think he's like good positionally. I just think he has like little arms and can't rebound. So,
Yeah,
but I would have taken KO for sure. I
definitely.
don't know if KO has a new contract. I guess, yeah, he would have had to have, because that 4-year deal would have run out. So, um, it could have been a cap decision too, Dan. Considering what they just gave Hero as an extension and what they're committed to in Hero, Duncan, Jimmy, Kyle, and Bam.
Yeah,
So it could just be as simple as that.
cool. Okay, let's come on to the 15, 14, 13, 12, 11 seed.
You're Washington Wizards, baby.
Okay. Yep.
I think you know, and usually, like, I feel like these have been like the bottom Eastern Conference teams for a while. It's pretty you know what I mean? It's just again, the Bradley Beal saga. I'm sure that there's going to be a stretch of time where they're going to look good. I think the Porzingis Beal stuff. Let's see how that looks. Obviously, Porzingis is not like a bad player, but has really not shown life the way you'd like.
Yeah,
I know that they like Denny Advia. They have some guys there, some veterans.
yeah.
See what they
With
got in Rui. Although the clock's kind of ticking on that. I
yeah,
like Will Barton on there. He's just a good, solid veteran who is freaking winning basketball games for a really long time. I would love Will Barton here, just freaking scorer off the bench who
yeah.
can get to the rim, athletic, all that.
With Kuzma there as well, that's not a bad sort of that's a sneaky good sort of big three, if you like, isn't it? Because it sort of works if they can they can make it work. It does seem to have the ingredients there to do something. Is it enough to make them any sort of challenger for anything more than a play-in?
I think it kind of depends on what do you get out of Porzingis and does Beal regain his shooting touch? Because sneakily, Bradley Beal hasn't really shot the ball well lately,
Mhm.
last couple seasons, which you kind of think of Bradley Beal as like a dead eye shooter, but really like the three, he was 30% shooter last year on less volume, which is
Wow.
like, that's bad, dude. When Kyle Lowry had those numbers, like he was getting absolutely eviscerated here. Um, that's not good. Duncan Robinson was a 36% 3-point shooter, and everyone was mad at him.
Yeah.
So the year before that, Beal was 35%. The year before that, 35 again, 35 again. He hasn't had a 40% 3-point shooting season since 2016, 2017.
Wow.
So he's
It's
been
fallen
in
off.
real decline as a shooter, even as his points per game has gone up. Field goal attempt has been kind of oddly going up because he's getting to the rim more and stuff like that. But I think if he can kind of have a good shooting season, maybe closer to like 37, 38%. And then if Porzingis has a good year, I think that they can really make a push for like 10 or 9.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of ifs. And I think a lot of times in the NBA, if you have to have too many things go right, probably not all of them are going to go right. You may get one or two, but not all.
Yeah, they're always one of these teams that they never seem to know. They're always stuck in middle of nowhere, aren't they? They never seem like they want to tank. They never sort of feel like that's that their roster's better than to be able to tank. But then they're never quite good enough to make it as a playoff or even a play-in team so much now. So they've really been just the epiphany of mediocrity for what seems like forever. We'll see if they improve anymore, but not according to G's having them at 11. To be honest, yeah, I had them at 10. So no real difference between us. Right, we're into number 10 now, and I think it has to be Charlotte here. A bit of a strange roster. Obviously they got LaMelo, one of the league's most exciting players. Looking forward to watching him again this year. And then a lot of it could depend on whether Hayward stays fit, because if you've got to fit Hayward, you've got a very productive player. He's shown year on year that he just doesn't seem to slip away, but it's just in terms of production, but it's just his health. It's whether he can keep that going. Rozier picked up, Ober Jr., PJ Washington's exciting player. It's an okay team. It'll cause you a problem on any night, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, also the unfortunate thing with Bridges and the awful things
Yeah,
that he did was he likely won't play, which hurts their team, which is not really the important part. Which I think the Hornets made the right decision, and I think more teams should be doing what they do. I think
yeah,
more teams kind of try to sweep it under the rug. So shout out to the Hornets for doing the right thing, but on the court that affects him because he was really improving. They have the worst Martin twin. I don't think we talk about that enough. Everybody thought that the Heat got the lesser Martin twin, and I think time has proven that Caleb is better than Cody.
I'm all
So
for
let's
that.
see what Cody has. Caleb outplayed Cody last season. I do think Cody's obviously was projected to be a better shooter. So Caleb obviously stepped up there. So got to see where Cody ends up. Um, you know, I'm curious as to what they do with PJ Washington, kind of extension eligible, seeing how, what they want. I imagine they're going to pay him. What that number will be, I don't know. Hayward, guys like him, you got to wonder if they're going to be moved. The Hornets are still looking for a center. I feel like they're in a constant state of trying to find a center. That's not a Plumlee.
That's what I
So
was just about to say. Is it Plumley?
that's not a Plumlee. So kind of an eye on teams like Portland for Nurkic. I know that that's like a popular kind of destination for him. Like who needs a center, who wants to get rid of their center kind of thing. So I agree with you. I think they could be electric. I think that they're a team that if a lot goes right for them, they can kind of creep up to 8 or whatever, because obviously a ball is that kind of spectacular. But I just don't really see it. And to be honest with you, the more I think about it, I actually may actually may think less of them than I do other teams, because the roster is really lackluster. But you got, I guess it's really propped up by Rozier, LaMelo, and Gordon Hayward just being
Yeah.
better than and Kelly Oubre, who played well, just being better than like other guys on the other team. So it's like, I think the rounded out roster is more mediocre, but like the top end is better.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. It's as I said, it's a strange sort of league or conference here because you've got now. I think this is where it now starts to get a pretty big gap between the rest of the teams. So the rest of the teams now will look at themselves as almost trying to get as a play-in or a playoff lock. And the rest of them, the teams we just spoke about, are more like play-in hopefuls or even just tankers now. So let's get on to number 9 and see who you had in that spot.
The Chicago Bulls.
I had Chicago Bulls as well.
I think they're the team that's most likely to have a drop off. I think they got a pretty extraordinary year out of DeRozan, which I don't really know how replicable that is. And I know that I'm like kind of like the DeRozan hater on Twitter, but it's for a reason. And I'm not gonna let one season just really affect how I look at him. That was his best season. That was his best scoring season of his career.
Mm.
You know what I mean? He shot 52% on twos, which I believe is the second highest mark of his career. And he had his second highest field goal percentage of his career. And he had his highest 3-point percentage of his career. A lot of career years for a 32-year-old. I just don't know how that holds.
Mm.
Getting to the line, I think that for sure, is not in the top 3. It's his 4th highest season getting free throws. That's a number that I'm going to look at because DeMar really depends on kind of getting to the free throw line and stuff like that. The Bulls defense, I think they haven't answered questions that I think we all have, particularly like what's going on at power forward. I know that they had some injuries last season, but at the end of the day, in important games, they had freaking they had Lonzo guarding other power forwards, and Lonzo has a lot of questions about his health. Pat Williams obviously was going to be in the mix. Vucevic had another, is in clear decline. So all that combined, not getting the same out of DeMar, Lonzo not being available, Vucevic with another year in decline, stuff like that. And I think what you have in the rest of the roster kind of is what it is. I don't think Levine's going to get any better or not better. Maybe that's unfair. I don't know. I just kind of think this is who he is as a player, who's a really good, talented scorer. Not going to help you on defense. Obviously, Gogi recently signed there and everything. I think Kobe White is what he is. We all know how I feel about Andre Drummond, all that stuff. So again, maybe if Pat Williams is pretty spectacular and they loved him, they really, really loved him, and they didn't want to move him when they were the 1 seed, and they could have really made a push, but they didn't. They wanted to keep him. So, and then obviously, Caruso was really good for them as well. But, like I said, I think the East is so good this year that, even a team that has a lot of talent like the Bulls, I think are going to take a step back unless DeMar can keep up really insane stuff.
Well, DeMar was an MVP candidate up until All-Star break last year. So that's why they seeded so high, is because he was off the charts good. And I don't think he's gonna, to give them any sort of chance to be in, because everybody's got better, to give them any sort of chance to be in that mix again around that sort of, because that was around the 4th seed, 1 to 4 seed for a long part of that season, mainly down to DeMar DeRozan heroics. And I just don't see that being replicated, especially when you look at, as you said, Lonzo's health issues. All right, Caruso was a big miss for them. But defensively, they just don't seem to have enough. And that replicated massively when the fact that they was 0-16 against top 4 teams, I think it was last year.
Yes.
It's all very well having talented offensive players, and they've got that in abundance, but you need someone to keep it at the other end, and they just don't seem to have it.
They don't have depth either. They don't have depth. They don't have positional depth, and it's just a tall task, especially with kind of such a wing heavy league. They don't have any wing defenders to throw at guys, and like I said, like you have to have an answer for power wings for Jimmy Butler, for uh, Jason Tatum, for Kevin Durant, for Cade. You know what I mean? There's like tons
Yep.
of guys on the perimeter that you need answers for, and you're just going a little too small, and that's a lot to ask of Caruso, especially without Ball.
Yep, I think that's spot on. I think, yeah, there's never been more real attacking talent in this league, and the Bulls just haven't got the roster to really sort of stop that. So, okay, I was with you. I had them at 9. So in at 8, I'm going for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh wow,
Um,
really?
yeah, despite the off-season trade, their team on paper looks very good. Mitchell, Mobley, Allen, Garland, Levert, Love. I mean, that's it's a
Good.
real good. It's a real good, strong, up and coming, exciting, talented roster.
Ricky
But it's just
Rubio.
when I look at what's above them, I just don't see them quite breaking it. Maybe they could go up above one more, but I just don't feel like they've got the experience to make a successful challenge to anything more than that. I don't think a lot of people was putting them as like a home court seeding. I just don't see it yet this year. I think that it's a really exciting time to be a Cleveland fan now, which is a mad thing to say after the years they've had since LeBron left. But I just don't see them penetrating what's above them at the moment. But I think they're going to be a real good league pass watch. You seemed a little bit surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the addition of Mitchell, who gives them kind of their go-to bucket getter, I think that's really what they were missing. They are very solid defensively. I think they have a lot of pieces. It's funny because I think Larry Nance would be like an excellent kind of last piece to this puzzle, which
Yeah,
they had to trade. But given how good Mobley looks, whatever they get out of Okoro, obviously Jared Allen was absolutely incredible last season, and I'm excited. We see how good Mitchell is in a two-man game with a guy like Gobert, a big targeting roller. Jared Allen, really of similar ilk. A little bit more gifted offensively, I would say as well. Great defender, and like I think Kevin Love off the bench, who was a six man of the year candidate. Um, I don't know, man. I think they're good, and I think that they're better than teams like Atlanta, who I think have a lot of question marks about, what's going to go on, who's going to get moved. I think that they made a big splash for a guy that I don't know the fit. So I think Cleveland's a bit of a safer, bet. I think the backcourt of really, I mean, Garland and Mitchell, I mean, that's going to be really one of the best backcourts in the league, really
yeah,
explosive. I mean, you could really, they're a lot deeper than most teams. Rubio is a really solid backup guard, even at his age, really can hold as long as the starters can get a lead. Rubio's the guy that you come in, him and some other of the vets that they have kind of come in and hold the lead. So I really like their team. I would have put them a little higher, but I think it's fair because again, like all these teams, they're an injury away from something weird happening.
yeah. I think I did sort of back and forth with them with one probably noticeable team at least, but then I think after that next team, I think then there becomes a definite step. Maybe there's maybe two you could maybe say that they would jostle between, but there we are. They're in at 8, but you make a good case for them being higher. So who did you have at 7?
So I would have had so probably I'm between two teams. I'm gonna go Atlanta. I was between them and the Nets.
Okay.
Um, I think this next tier, I think after Atlanta, it gets a little hard, but they've had issues in the regular season at times. I haven't seen them put together a full 82. They kind of have like bad first halves, good second halves. Um, why that is, I don't know. DeJounte is going to help their defense. Um, obviously Trey's a big target. Capella missed a ton of time last year too, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of getting guys like Capella back in the line. Yeah, Capella played. Well, no, he played 70 games last season, so it wasn't that many, but felt like more. That's why we check. You know what I mean? I don't want to talk out of my butt. Uh, you know, I think they have talent. I think obviously Trey Young is really special. I think that there's also a formula to attacking Trey Young teams, and I think that DeJounte is going to help them. Whether DeJounte can be a good shooter or not is going to be a litmus test for how successful this team is. I think Murray and Hunter defensively make a really interesting kind of wing combination, and I think that that's kind of going to be the fulcrum of like what they do defensively, along with whatever Capella does in a drop. But Chris Silva's there. Oh, look at that! Shout out to Chris Silva. I didn't know
Hey,
he was a
legend.
Hawk.
Yeah,
Okongwu also, I think, if he kind of take a little bit of a step, and then obviously the big question mark is going to be John Collins. What's going to happen with him? Is he going to be a Hawk by the deadline? There's all sorts of kind of rumblings all the time about him. I thought Bogdanovich was a little disappointing last season. I hope he can bounce back, but I do think that they're good. I think that their offense is going to be good, and I think as long as they can get to like a respectable like top 15 to 13 defense, I think that they should win enough games to kind of get into that like 7-5 mix. You know what I mean?
yeah. I think that's about right, and that's the sort of thinking I had as well. Because I think they've had two weird seasons in a row. Because I think that when they got to the Eastern Conference Finals, I thought that was an overachievement. I thought that was weird. I thought that was more about the Sixers falling apart rather than
Well, they got New
that's
York and a shaky Philly team, so it's like
yeah, exactly. So
matchups
I
matter,
think that
folks.
was a bit weird. But then the same last season, I think that that was a strange underachieving year as well, off of the back of a very successful season before. But yeah, I looked at it. I did toss between them and the Cavs there. But I just think with the addition of Murray, I think that starting five is good if it can stay healthy. So we'll see what Atlanta can do. But we've got them both. We had them both in at 7 there. So 6, then it gets tricky now because I really want to say the Brooklyn Nets, but there's just that X factor about the Brooklyn Nets is if they can stop themselves from falling over themselves,
They're gonna have
then
health problems, Dan. I just
yeah,
that's the one team I look at more than anybody, and I was like, I just don't I just
no
don't
one
see
knows.
Ben, Kyrie, and Katie putting together, you know, I imagine they're all gonna hover around 60 something games, and you can mix and match them, but I just think it gets hard. They went 44 and 38 last season. I think they're gonna probably be around that, maybe a little bit better. But given how good the East is, maybe not.
But if you think that if they can keep everybody on court as much as possible, does that as a fit, it seems to be quite special. And if they could be anything that from 1 to 6 here,
They have
if
the
on
highest variance, I think, in the
yeah,
conference.
yeah,
Maybe in the league. Maybe them and the Lakers. I think. Oh, the Lakers.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
you can't count out LeBron ever, but I feel the same about Durant.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what's the situation with Buddy's health? Joe Harris.
I think he's
He's
back now. I
good to
think he
go, right?
played. I think he
Yeah,
played. Yeah, I think he played in their first preseason game. So yeah, I think that I'm going to put them in at 6. I'm going to do it
that's
because
fair.
the Nets. Their biggest problem will be them tripping over themselves. They're always days away from the next drama. So you're relying on that roster to stay healthy, to stay out of trouble. And I just think at some point it won't happen. Something will go wrong. Kyrie will Kyrie, Durant will Durant. Who knows where Ben's next injury is from? I think the variant is huge. It wouldn't surprise me if they end up running away with the conference, but it wouldn't surprise me if they end up a first round exit again because who knows what that team can do. I'm going to put them in at 6.
I think the pickup of Royce O'Neal is really nice for them because that really gives them. I know that he's a little small, but he has shown an ability to defend fours, and I think kind of with their health, with kind of keeping in mind that they're going to be their health problems, you know, picking up TJ Warren for the minimum, I think that's a good risk to take. Even though we haven't seen him play in a while, guys like Patty Mills, had a disappointing season. Look for him to bounce back. Nick Claxton, still really good, young, right? Seth
Yep.
Curry had a really good season for them. It's just, for me, it's mostly a health thing. Uh, they're going to have enormous playoff equity. Just Durant and Kyrie are really good. I don't know how to feel about Simmons. I think defensively, between Simmons, O'Neal, and Durant, I think you can really cover your bases in a way that they hadn't been able to. How that looks in pressure situations in the playoffs with Ben, I think we kind of know what that looks like, and that might actually be their limiter. But in the regular season, I could see them, like you said, being anything from 1 to 6.
Good stuff. Okay. The number 5 seed is up to you, sir.
Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh,
I,
okay. I didn't see that.
I don't understand the fascination with them. I didn't think they were particularly impressive last season. Um, Embiid is another guy who's never healthy. I think PJ Tucker is cute. It doesn't really solve their main issues. Um, and I think I'm just not really impressed. Like, okay, like you get PJ. Is James Harden like gonna look better? I don't really know. It really looks like he's on the decline. Took less money and everything. I don't know, man. I just don't. Maybe I'm selling them a little too short. I just don't like the team. I don't like the depth. Maybe Maxi takes another leap. I'm not a huge Maxi guy. I think he's good, but like I said, they just don't inspire a lot in me, and I think the teams on top of them are just better. I think they got kind of lucky against the Raptors in the playoffs. I think that if you replay that series, the Raptors could put up a better fight. And then again, Scotty Barnes got hurt and all that. So
Yeah.
I'm just not impressed. I don't think Embiid's going to top his season. I think you would need Embiid to be kind of that level of MVP candidate, which I don't know if he can have another season where he outdoes himself. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I would count against him. And on Hart, I don't really believe in the Harden thing and all that. So that's kind of where my thinking comes down to. I think
Okay.
we know what Tobias Harris is at this point, and I
Mm.
think we know what this looks like. And I just really think that they've seen the top of their game, and I think this is clearly kind of a group of players, kind of like Utah, where you just keep cycling stuff around the same group, and eventually you're just getting diminishing returns every year.
Yeah, I think that a lot of it will obviously depend on Embiid producing what he did last year. Because to be
And
fair,
being healthy, because they suck when
yeah,
he's not there.
but to be fair, he was healthy last year. I think it was one of the first seasons that he had where he played a hell of a lot more games than he did last year. You'll probably tell me differently if not.
He played
Um,
68 games,
mm,
but like his career, Dan, for that point, 31 games, 63, 64, 51, 51, 68. You're
mm,
right. He played more games, but 68 games is like, if
yeah, you
that's
still
like,
need.
oh my God, if he played a ton of games, like I would have said, like, oh, Durant probably plays 68 games or something.
But
So
I think with the Sixers, I think that it might be the time where this is now they've been processing for what seems like forever, and I feel like this is now probably their best chance. Definitely since the Jimmy Butler years when they had there. I think Tobias had a bit of a comeback season last year. I think he was good. A lot of it may well depend on Maxi being the player he was next year and still taking another jump. PJ, yeah, it's helped him out defensively. They've also added in Montrezl Harrell as well. I think that I had them at 3. I
wow.
think that they're. I think this is. If you're a Sixers fan, you would probably look at it as though, look, you do need a lot to go right. You need Embiid to be healthy. You need Harden took more of this sort of facilitating role last year, but I think they may now look to him to go back to being a go-to scorer, because if they can do that and the rest of their pieces that you look at their roster, yeah, the depth might not be there, but as a starting five especially, that's pretty damn good. That's going to give you a problem. You're going to have a tough game against them. So, yeah, I had them a little bit higher than at 3, but yeah, they're in there at 5. So over to number 4, the home court seeds. I'm going to have the Toronto Raptors. I actually had them at 5, so not a million miles out.
I had him at 4, so we're just basically switching. Yeah.
Okay, so that's cool. So yeah, look, the
Rematch of
Raptors.
last year's first round.
Yeah, look, they've not really added anybody. I don't think have they added anybody apart from Bo Cruz. I think that's it.
Not really, just a lot of internal improvement, fam.
Yeah,
Getting Scotty Barnes another year out
yeah.
there, gelling.
I mean, their team. I mean, they're one team that do have some depth, and again, like Siakam, Fred VanVleet, massive Fred VanVleet fan. I think that contract is one of the best in the NBA. As with OG Anunoby, I think they've got real
Oh, they got
good
Otto
ends.
Porter. That was their big acquisition, who I think fits what they want to do really well.
Yeah, I think that it's a real good blend of hustle, of shooting, of to the rim target, to defense. Trent's been a good player. Precious has improved. Yeah, they're a problem. They're a tough team, and I think they transitioned back from being away for so long last year. They still didn't have NBA fans in their court for a long part of last season because of COVID protocol. So they've got on course to be on an upwards trajectory. So you had them at 4, I had them at 5. They're in our chart at 4. I think that's pretty fair. I'm quite high on the Toronto Raptors, as I know you are, G.
I am, and to be honest with you, I think their upside is going to come down to the following three things. It's going to come down to how much does Scotty Barnes improve. It's going to come down to what is OG Anunoby bringing offensively this year, and it's going to come down to can Fred VanVleet finish at the rim? Because sneaky been a problem for him throughout his career, and it's really been, I think, the biggest knock on him, and I think it's really fair to ask, about his finishing numbers because they've been bad. These are his numbers at the rim. He was 50% at the rim last year. It's bad, 6th percentile, 44 the year before, 48 the year before, 49 the year before, 48 and 39. Abysmal.
Yeah.
And for them to be better, he needs to be a threat getting to the basket and scoring. I think he's a very good passer. All his other metrics are really good across the board, but that is a number that is just you can't to quote that weatherman, you can't survive it. And your kids die too. They need they need that's a deep cut if you know it. They need that to be better.
It's the best thing I saw. That was incredible. I
Dan,
love that.
it was, when we're down here, for the audience that doesn't know, there was a Florida weatherman tracking, I believe it was Hurricane Michael, that the hurricane tracked, came very, very close to shore, but then did like a boomerang thing and then went east. So it was just missing the coast of Florida. This weatherman and it was a really nasty storm. And this weatherman goes on TV and it goes, this moves 20 miles to the west and you and everyone you know are dead. All of you. Because you can't survive it. And then he does a long pause. And your kids died too. And we need a little humor as Floridians because it could all end, Dan, it could all end any day.
Oh man.
There might not be, the Heat might have been playing in like, I don't know, fucking, Iowa or Sioux Falls this year. You know what I mean? We might not, if Irma or damn Ian went a different track,
Yeah. I'm obviously yeah. It was just one of those things. It totally took me off guard, and it was a spit your drink out moment. It was
it's never not funny.
It's never not funny, but yeah, I'm glad that that Ian missed Miami, but of course, thoughts and prayers go out to everybody that got affected. Hopefully,
scary.
the devastation isn't too bad. On to number 3.
Speaking of devastation,
I think we're all going to be agreed here because this might be actually a bit higher because I think we switched here. I think your Sixers choice threw this out a little bit. You had them at, I think, 4 or 5. Did you have Heat at 4 or 5?
I have the Heat at 3.
Oh, you had the Heat at 3. I had them at 4. So, all right, we're not miles off then. So I've got the Heat at 3. I think that there's a lot of people that have said that this off season has been a bit of a dumpster fire and it's been really underwhelming, and I get that, but I also look at it on more of a positive trajectory where we've got a lot of guys here that are coming back with a chip on their shoulder.
Well, let me ask, Dan, why is it a dumpster fire?
Well, that's probably what the thing is. The fan base are obsessed with transactions.
Yeah,
it doesn't even matter who they are. If there's new blood in and they give you an interview and they tell you how hungry they are and how they're going to fight and rah rah rah, then we love them and we're getting their jerseys and suddenly we're going to be a good team. So that hasn't happened. So of course, Heat Twitter goes into meltdown. Now, I think that you look at Oladipo, who has labelled this as his revenge tour. I think you could say that maybe about 4 or 5 guys. Tyler Herro's got a hell of a lot to prove this year because he's been in every single trade negotiation for years. He's now settled in Miami. He's going to come back and show what he can do. Bam is going to be coming out hopefully with a new some new offensive rhythm and show us a bit more on that side. Caleb Martin has said that he wants that 4 spot and he's not going to give it up lightly. Duncan Robinson perhaps might come back and show us what a shooter he can be. These guys, there's a lot of people here that are going to be eager to go to show the team that this is a good side. And when you look at last year when we all predicted the Heat around a 4 or 5 seed, what did we do? We went on to top the conference. We went on as a 1 seed. So I think the 3 is it's not out of reach. You had them at 3.
I'm at 3. I think I think obviously health is going to be a concern. They're a team that I think is another high variance team that I'd be surprised if they get the 1 seed again. I thought that was a pretty special showing from them, and I think they benefited from Milwaukee's really slow start. Um, and Embiid kind of missing some time in the middle there, and
Yeah,
really Boston being really slow because Boston almost got that. I mean, if you remember,
yeah,
Boston started off super slow. They
awful. Yeah,
came back. So I hope Miami is healthier than they were last season. Kyle missed a ton of time because of personal reasons. Obviously, COVID ran rampant, and maybe they were just built really well because they had so much depth that they were able to withstand all that. But wouldn't bet on that again. I think that the 4 spot is obviously a huge question. I don't think that is so much a regular season problem as it is a playoff problem because I think that they'll be able to manufacture enough lineups where it doesn't matter and they'll have enough talent and good coaching to overcome that. And I think that up until the deadline, and then we can have a real evaluation about the team. I know that fans are upset because moves weren't made, but keeping Oladipo I think is pretty big.
yeah,
I think not signing PJ to a contract that would really hurt your future flexibility and stuff, I think is good. And I think people forget that like part of the reason why they lost against the Celtics was because of PJ. Like PJ was like very specifically the reason why the Miami's offense was so in the mud, unless for Butler. So it's like, why are you clamoring to keep the guy that like really kind of nuked your playoff hopes? And again, that's not disrespect to PJ because obviously he's a really good player and a professional, and I would have liked to have kept him and then kind of built around that. But at the end of the day, like, the Celtics decision not to guard PJ Tucker shrank the court in a way for Miami that made
yeah,
it really impossible for them to play their best lineups. And
yeah.
I understand the Heat not committing years and cap to a player that did that. And I
Uh,
think anybody who's mad at that has to really like, sometimes you lose players and that's fine, but it doesn't mean like the organization's like stupid or anything. And you say like, well, why didn't they replace him? Well, there wasn't really anybody to replace him with. And then at that point, it gets to fans wanting a different vision for the team than what the organization wants. It's like, well, why didn't they get like another center or whatever? And it's like, well, they clearly don't want to play that way.
mm,
Like they clearly like Spo doesn't do that. And then we saw what a 2 big lineup looked with Yurt and Bam in the first preseason game. It didn't look good.
yeah,
And I don't know. We've seen the team with a Myers Leonard and a Kelly Olynyk. Like we've seen the permutations of these teams, and they've always been better with a wing at the 4. And though that specific guy was not available, and I think that they did the right thing by holding their chips and waiting for the deadline. So I think 3 is fair. I think the other teams ahead of them, I think, have earned the benefit of the doubt to be the top 2 seeds. And I think if Miami finishes anywhere between 3 and 5, I think that that's fine.
yeah,
Obviously, you want home court. I mean, at the end of the day, listen, they lost Game 7 on their home floor, so we've seen Heat teams overcome home court, and we've seen Heat teams cough it up. So just
yeah.
get there. They're gonna have a lot of playoff equity, and SPO teams don't go quietly for the most part.
Yeah, and I think with the PJ stuff, you summed it up perfectly. Look, of course, in an ideal world, you want to keep PJ Tucker. Of course, you do. He's a dog. He fits this mentality perfectly. But anybody who wants to pay him that
Love
money
him.
over that amount of years, you just can't do that.
It
You
was
can't
the years, Dan. It wasn't the figure. It was the years.
the years exactly. Yeah, it's that's it. And so it makes sense. And you're right. Look, we just
Do
had
you
an
remember how
NBA
mad? I'm sorry to cut you off. Do you remember how mad people got when they signed James Johnson and these guys to 3-4 year contract?
exactly that. We can't. It's a strange
They can't
reflection, isn't it?
win. The
You
organization
can't
can't
win.
win.
You
And I'm
can't win.
not here to shill for them or anything, but like, you know, at some point they have to learn from their mistakes, and I think that they've shown you that they have.
They definitely did. That's a really good thing to have brought up. Yeah,
And they paid their guy. They kept their guy. You
that's
know what
it.
I mean?
That's it.
And like
Exactly.
at the end of the day, him walking for nothing is a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And you can say you can't give him that contract or whatever. They'll move it. If they don't want to pay the rest of it, they'll move it. They always move it. Russell Westbrook got traded like 5 times.
Exactly that.
Joe Johnson's untradeable contract got traded like 3 times. You could trade any deal.
You can
So
trade
I don't want to
any
hear
deal.
that.
Any
You
deal. Yeah.
That guy cannot walk for nothing. That's a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And
100%.
the last thing I'll
One,
say, Dan, and I'm sorry to like I know that
God,
people too much time, but I think when Dwayne left and when the Heat were at odds with Boston as doctors, and when LeBron left, they took a hit as an organization that players liked.
yeah.
And you saw that they didn't get free agents for a while. And it wasn't until Dwayne grew fond of them again that changed. And I think that the organization is overcorrecting for their mistakes and being a little too loyal to players, paying them, they didn't play hardball with Bam. They wanted to have flexibility and cap space, and they always like to give players extensions at the last possible second because that's how you can play with the cap.
Yeah.
They didn't play games with Bam. They give him his money when he asks. He's like, my peers are getting paid. I would like to get paid. And they did that. And Tyler, the same. And Tyler got his extension before the season, and he's likely going to start because they understand that this is a players' league and they cannot be the hard ass organization that they were back in the 90s and the early 2010s and the early 2000s. And I think with Dwayne and Chris and LeBron, that the way that ended, each of them specifically, was a player gripe with the organization, whether that be for money, whether that, and they were right about Bosch, but it still optically did not look good for them. And then obviously LeBron had problems. So like, I think people need to understand the way that they're operating and before they lob certain criticisms, and then understand where the organization has come from. And
Mhm.
it's not, we're not playing 2K. They're managing personalities, agents, all sorts of things. And like I said, they've made the mistakes of paying Whiteside and paying James Johnson and everything. Like, they're learning, and trust them to learn from their mistakes.
Yeah, that's it. The words out of my mouth. That's the perfect way to say they've learned from their mistakes. So yeah, and when you look at the fact what we just had an NBA poll, it might have even been today or yesterday,
Yesterday.
where it was about the best coach in the league, 52% Spo. You know, this is what I mean. You've got to trust your front office, trust your coach. This organisation has, as you said, learned from its mistakes. So there we go. We've got the Heat at 3. I didn't even mention probably the most player who's got the bit between their teeth this year. The man on the jersey behind me here. Do you recognise this, by the way, G?
My
Cole
guy.
Lowry Laugher. I got my Cole Lowry jersey out for you, buddy, just for you. That
I
was
love him.
big Cole fan. I hope he's going to have shut a lot of mouths up this season. G,
My
I think this.
chat was making fun of me. They said that I found all the weight that Lowry lost. They were lighting me up yesterday, man.
That's not nice.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, man. I think I might have taken your go actually, but you've got the deciding pick here because there's 2 teams left. So I'm quite pleased I took your go, I believe, because now you've got the hard decision of either the Boston Celtics or the Milwaukee Bucks in at 2 here. Who are you going with?
For number 2?
Yep.
Boston Celtics.
Yep. Same. And
It's
I
less
actually had
about
it.
the Celtics and more about Milwaukee just being a machine.
Yeah, I did have it the other way round just a couple of weeks ago, but with all this stuff that's happened now with IAM, new coach, I think that it's more equipped now for the Bucks with what they've got. But yeah, I had Boston now at 2. Big blow losing Gallinari. I don't know, is he out for the season, Gallinari?
Probably. I don't know. I don't. And if he does come back, I don't see him making too big an impact coming off that injury.
Yeah. Okay. So we've got the Bucks in at number 1. What do you feel about the Bucks this year? They're the team to beat, maybe league wide.
Excuse me? Oh, if they're gonna have the number 1 record league wide,
Yeah, are they the team to beat this year, league
I
wide?
think so. I think they should be the favorites. I think them and the Clippers.
Yeah.
I think it's just funny because we keep doing this with the Clippers. It's just, I don't know, man. Kawhi's so good. Kawhi is like this. The last time we saw Kawhi is just such a beast. I guess in the bubble it looked bad, but Denver's another team that kind of turn some heads. I'm gonna really watch closely what they're doing because they're a team that could be sneaky 1 seed and really rip everyone. But I think Milwaukee for sure. I think the teams Milwaukee, Boston, and the Nets have like the potential to like run away with the number 1 seed in the East and possibly the number 1 seed in the NBA. So those are the teams that I look at, but I think Milwaukee is probably the most likely to do it. I guess it would be the team to beat. Giannis is probably going to gun for another MVP too. I mean, that's going to be another fun race to watch.
I think a bit like the Clippers, you say that it comes again down to health, because if the team stays healthy, yeah, you look at the roster and it's brutal. It's got everything. It's got height. It's got athleticism. It's got shooting. It's got defense. It's crazy. That team at full strength is as well rounded as it gets as a roster construction. And the Clippers, I mean, that's just stars everywhere and real good role players and production everywhere across that team. But again, it all comes down to health. So there we have it then, guys. We've done it for another year. Let's run through Giancarlo Navas and Dan Healy's 15-1. So we had 15 Orlando Magic, 14 the Pacers, 13 the Knicks, 12 the Pistons, 11 the Wizards, 10 Hornets, 9 Bulls, 8 the Cavs, 7 the Hawks, 6 the Nets, 5 the Sixers, 4 Raptors, 3 Heat, 2 Celtics, and top are the Bucks. I think we've done all right there.
I think so. I think we may get called homers for putting the Heat so high, but whatever.
We will get called homers. We're going to get people in our mentions. We're going to get Knicks fans having a go at us. We're going to get Bulls fans. Yeah, but there we go.
It
We'll
truly is a Heat hater list, not giving the Celtics a 1 seed, underseeding the Sixers, and making the Knicks bad. Yeah, it's truly a Heat hater list.
It is. I never actually thought of it, but you're right. It is a real Heat hater list.
Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. G, I've taken up way too much of your time, but I really appreciate you coming on. I hope and pray we're gonna see, of course, Hangover Time back again this year. Yeah.
Yes, sir. We're doing a couple changes. We're going to be doing it once a week. They're going to be longer shows. The vision is, like more of a variety show, like how the Tonight Show is, more pre-produced content, more letting Brass and Alf and the rest of the crew get more creative with kind of their medium. I think that having it every day can be difficult to kind of be as creative as we want to be. So kind of switching into the once a week model. We'll still be doing post-game shows, so that's not going away. You'll still see me, Alf, Moose, Tiff, Bond, everybody after every game. It just won't be Hangover Time, but Hangover Time will be once a week. We'll announce it at the top of the week, so don't worry about that on our Twitter and all our socials and on stream. But the goal is to make Hangover Time bigger, better, and unlike anything that anyone's seen in sports media. So we're really excited.
I cannot wait because it is already hands down the best show for entertainment, for
You guys
knowledge,
are the best, man.
For humor, the personalities you got on there, plus the analysis as well. It's just the whole thing is just elite. So if this is going up another level, less frequent but more production, wow, I'm all for it. I can't wait for it. The season is nearly upon us, guys. G, thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back next week, guys. As I said, this is my guys. I've done now 6 residents now throughout the season. Giancarlo Navas has kicked this off. So we are now going weekly with each one of these guys every single week. So your favorite personalities from Heat Media will be with us. So we've got, as I said, G, we've got Brady Hawk, we've got Ethan Skolnick, we've got David Ramil, we've got Jeremy Taché, we've got Will Manso. What a list that is. They're going to be coming on Heating Up the UK every 6 weeks. So we will see you next week for another episode. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Take it easy.